But what is then the tip that you would give to an aspiring developer or somebody who's not yet ready for like an international career but is struggling between national, international, or like getting that meteor from junior to meteor level?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think community is still relevant. Like, we still have to keep the community active. Having this 1-2 event around JavaScript. So,
Yeah.
all these things create awareness and bring people closer to the companies that, might have these opportunities for training, right? For me, I feel that's a very good starting point for an aspiring developer. And if possible, trying to find a role that you can volunteer and learn from, possibly when they're willing to actually train.
Yeah. I think it's first you must find where your passion is. I personally, then see if if I want to become, say, the best Django developer, I should focus on Django and become so good at it. So we have the problem I've faced is that we have a lot of people who know, say, a bit of Django, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of that, and if you place them before a client,
they don't know the craft.
Yeah,
because they don't have that experience.
Yeah, so they should say, I want to be the best React developer out there. If they're looking for React developers, I should be among the very top.
Yeah.
Then once you feel like you've exhausted that, which I believe learning never stops, then you could start something else and also become super good at it.
I think the ones I've seen really, but it has come from deep down, that you want it so bad. Because becoming starting a career in software engineering it can be challenging at times.
Yeah.
And I can give you an example. One of our worst classes, we had 16 students, most of them working,
Yeah.
and trying to do the transition to take 90% paid their first deposit, 50%, but we remained with only 6 who moved on to complete the course. And when we asked them, it was, well, I'm busy, I can't create time for this. But you see, at the end of the day, it's, do you want it so badly?
Yeah.
One of the examples I have is of a young gentleman called Augustine Chisutu. Do you remember Augustine Chisutu?
I think if I saw him, I would.
This was a young man, back in 2015. So, who used, when ThoughtWorks came into the market, he was so inspired by the type of company that it was, that he used to attend every community event at Outbox. Then he used to stay behind and read almost up to 12 p.m., sometimes overnight, and go home.
That's dedication.
Because that company was hiring through community, he ended up getting an internship at ThoughtWorks.
Yeah.
Then he ended up joining ThoughtWorks full time. When they closed their Ugandan office, they relocated him to Australia. So for me, that, when you look at such examples of the trajectory some people take to really get to where they are, you must really want it so bad.
Yeah.
True. I've actually seen
and utilize the opportunity.
Yeah, I've seen a number of such stories, and that's why I say being successful in software engineering is largely self-initiative. Even when we're still in college, they would give you only the basics. For you to separate yourself from the rest, you had to put in that extra 70%, and that's would differentiate you from everyone else. And that's by industrial knowledge, practice, becoming curious, and experimenting. And like you said, community is very, very, very important, because if I'm working with David every day, I'm learning. Yeah. If I'm doing that alone, it will take me a much longer time. So if I have a lot of people who are super good and I can interact with them, see what they do, become better at my craft, challenge myself, it's a
but
faster
also
thing.
how they work in teams. Because
Exactly.
like we're talking often about like the hard skills, the technical skills, but like the people skills and how to communicate with one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so key. And what we often face with developers that the technical skills are great,
Yeah.
but it's very hard to connect them with the client because there's just not a
Soft
very
skills.
personal fit, or the soft skills are a little bit lacking. Like what kind of role can organizations like Outbox or other training initiatives
Yeah.
play a role in that too? Because I think we're now like in the global village where we're working for somebody from the US and then for somebody from Kenya,
Yeah.
from Egypt, Australia, wherever, and it's all there are all these cultural differences.
Absolutely. I think soft skills are equally as important as technical skills. Very much so. And that's where I think a number of us very good developers lose it.
Yeah. Most developers.
Most of you find a super good developer, but soft skills are not there.
Yeah.
And if you can't communicate and work within a team, it's just not going to work, especially if it's remote.
But can it be taught via training, or is
Yes,
it
it can.
yeah, or is
It
it
can.
something that you need to
Experience.
do?
I think for
Yeah.
me, one of the challenges, honestly, is opportunity to practice. Like there can't be enough Tungas to occupy the demand for on-the-job experience before I transition.
Yeah.
There can't be enough refactories or whatever. So it's a very difficult question, but I think it likely goes to how do we get as many companies as possible to play in this community space and maybe open up their HR for mock interviews or put some projects out there and we see how people
Open
work
source,
teams,
yeah.
the open source aspects, right? So I think for me it's the quick win is what we do as a community
Yeah.
to expose these opportunities and maybe now other companies, when they see the benefits, they'll start plugging into what such things will have become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What challenges did you face? Because like I said earlier, I think that being one of the pioneers in this whole incubation co-working and getting people set for the international market, you get a lot of raw people, yeah, that you have to start from scratch, and then you have to give all these kinds of trainings.
Yeah.
And I do agree that it is really, really best to do it around, say, a product or a project, and not just to give theoretical knowledge, because then you get to see the mistakes and you get to correct them, and they get to learn and they get to get better.
I mean, I can't point to one answer. I think those that I've seen succeed
Yeah.
have been anchored in a mission somewhere.
Yeah.
Some of them have been anchored in the open source tools that American company was doing. Some of them have been anchored in other companies that were in the space doing something like Andela, right? Like Tunga, for instance, yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's about helping these people have a reason to believe and aspire to beyond meeting and eating pizza
Yeah.
and listening to a talk on JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
Well, those were also a lot of fun. I remember a lot of fun.
Pizza
with
nights,
guys
huh?
at There's a ThoughtWorks and at Outbox.
Yeah.
And I think back then we had, like, how many people were attending? Around between 30 and 80,
Yeah,
depending on the
30
topic.
and 80 depending on the topic, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even sometimes to 100. So those were fun days, right?
Yeah.
But
Very much.
only 10% going to find a reason to believe, right? And I think for me it's about what I've learned. If I'm to do this, is trying to anchor community engagement and giving people reasons to believe and aspire for something. So if we do a talk on outsourcing, working as a remote developer,
Yeah.
and I bring Tunga, and they see what Tunga does and what it can do, then they have a reason to believe in what
Absolutely.
they're doing, right?
Yeah.
I think that for me was the secret sauce that I could point to for many of them that went on to become successful versus those that did not. So we have to anchor our efforts in some companies, we encourage them to
Yeah.
come and share, come and open up for people to see.
And
Our
yeah.
young people struggle with seeing what the market looks like. They have no idea.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think indeed what we do at Tunga should be publicized more, and a lot more should be encouraged.
Maybe this podcast will definitely
Yeah,
help.
yeah. Because if someone knows that if I study hard, if I learn how to code, and I become so good at it, I'm certainly going to get placed. Though it's a clear path, yeah? It's not an easy one, but there are clear steps that I'll do A, B, C, D, E, and I will get placed.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. I've seen people I studied with left college, knew nothing about code, and they said, I'm just going to learn it. 2 years later, they're very senior developers, yeah, and they are doing so well, and you're like, wow, yeah. And it's very inclusive. We work with so many very super talented female developers, male, and it just has to do mostly with how badly you want it.
And attitude. But that's how badly you want it. And positive, open attitude, transparent.
Yeah, and if you look
accountable.
So if you look at also generally, I look Africa, how countries are also trying to embrace it. Look at Rwanda, creating policies that encourage, say, investors like, say, Tunga, all these other tech companies to come in. We're giving them incentives, create these opportunities. That should be done more. Even
and I think for me, it's about getting companies like Tunga and putting them on a pedestal. So, for instance, government now has this business process outsourcing mandate it wants to fulfill, which is basically getting more young people to do more remote work.
Yeah.
Right? The likes of what KPMG do, Accenture, and Tunga. But they've not had opportunities to hear from entities like yourself in terms of how you're able to do it. How big is the opportunity?
So you come in, huh?
And I think when we encourage such entities to put money to things like training and help them build such initiatives, I think we shall unlock much more.
So much
demand. I know what's happening in Ukraine, but it's one of those countries where I'm always sniffing around the IT associations and trying to see research they've done around business process outsourcing, software engineering to other European markets, right? Because that's a lot of money they're making in there. So I think it's about looking and learning from such small. That's a large country.
Yeah.
It is.
It's quite big.
Yeah.
But also Uganda is also not small. And if you look at Nigeria, these are huge markets.
Yeah, we almost have the same
Ghana,
population
Kenya.
with Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
So it's for me it's largely around trying to benchmark from that, and I think if we're able to give the Tungas more voice, more opportunities for advocacy, we shall slowly start changing mindset. Because honestly, what you don't know, you don't know. If I don't know that the European market has a deficit of X developers, I can't work hard to build a company to serve that need.
But do you think that's still true? Do you think there's still a lot of uncertain or a lot of knowledge lacking for seeing those market opportunities or seeing those job opportunities?
Very much so. We have what we call invisible jobs, and I think software engineering, people say the stats, but you really don't know where are these jobs? and how do I get them, right?
Yeah.
How do I get them? Because we say we're a global village, but I think our country, compared to other African countries, we need those intermediaries that unlock that linkage to those opportunities in the foreign markets. And we still need to work on that. And I think the more we work on that, the more we expose, the more we give these people a reason to believe.
I think that's what.
Otherwise, they'll think about other careers that are quick.
Yeah.
I
totally agree. I can't imagine seeing kids, still in, say, high school and showing them, all these kind of opportunities that are available for them. And you don't even have to have a college degree. You just have to be skilled. even if you're 15 and you're super good, you get
Go
placed.
for
But
it.
it's only if you see.
Yeah, but that, yeah, indeed, that linkage has to be done, has to be made, and also it comes into policymakers and stuff, because Africa, as the way I look at it, we have, I think, great effectiveness when it comes to human resource, so that it's not so expensive compared to the world, and yet the talent is also there.
Yeah.
What needs is the visibility and say that clear linkage,
People
like you
have
say.
to see a
Yeah.
reason to believe, and I think for me, that is how we shall unlock people staying in tech, more women coming to tech,
Yeah.
because from what I've heard, they have one perspective. It's only being a developer, but I can be a product manager, I can be a product designer, I
Quality
can be a
analyst.
business analyst, I
Yeah.
can be a quality, So our young people, that's where we need to play a lot, helping them understand the landscape and where the opportunities
And I think the future is bright because Africa is definitely on the radar.
Yeah.
In a lot of European countries, the US, it's also outside of those regions.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of more opportunities coming in the near future, and I think at the moment already there's not a shortage, but there's more competition, and the developers are actually having possibilities to choose.
Yeah.
Maybe not the ones that are just starting, but definitely the ones that are, started maybe in 2015 with Connie when we
And that's
met,
what
right?
that's why I say that this
Yeah.
knowledge is not time boxed. So you have to be 20. You must have had a college degree. Everything you need to know is on the internet.
Yeah.
You just have to like you said, give the developers that this is a clear path you have to take, and they'll just follow it.
We discussed a lot of very interesting stuff.
But if I may ask, maybe
Yes.
one last question.
Of course.
Where do you see the future of tech, not just in Uganda but Africa? Considering lessons we've had from the past.
Man, looking at the past, there have been so many experiments done. We've had companies like Andela come and train. I think in each country, were there in almost 6 African countries or 5, they had close to 200 or more developers they were training. We've had the same story with ThoughtWorks. We've had, we're seeing startups come out in training. We're also seeing lots of companies now trying to tap into the software development opportunities.
Yeah.
So you have Microsoft opening up a center in Kenya, Google opening up a center in Kenya. But that's not the first time these companies have tried to open up there.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's this up, down. There are waves of things that tend to happen, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's natural because companies change objectives, change missions, change. But I also think they change. Some of these movements are influenced by who else is thinking about these guys. When China started investing in Africa, people are now getting serious about it. But it's not the first time they've been here, right?
Yeah, true.
So for me, that's how I start to see the natural flow of things. Twitter is opening up in Nigeria,
Yeah.
but that's not the first time.
No.
So we shall always keep experiencing these waves based on the technologies, based on the demand for what skills people out there looking for, right? At one point it was web technologies, now it's artificial intelligence and data. Then, it will keep changing and changing and changing.
Yeah.
And I think for us on the African continent, it's just about demonstrating more evidence. And I think as we start seeing more examples of these big raises from African startups, the more motivation we shall have to build more and more and more companies, right? So I think it will only go from here on out, upward trend in terms of the need for developers, companies still trying to figure out the African market, because I think the consumer behaviors here are still very challenging. The infrastructure has grown, But the question we have is what services are running on this infrastructure. Most
Yeah.
of them are not relevant to the local context. Beyond WhatsApp and betting, it's very difficult for your ordinary person to use the internet for anything else, right? Because that's how they see the service. But I believe if we build more value on these rails, we shall see more and more people keep their phones on, keep their data on, trying to consume these services, right?
True.
The middle class will keep growing, the disposable income will keep growing, but of course all this is due to the shocks, the global shocks that we're seeing, the
I
COVID
know,
pandemic,
right?
which showed us that it's everyone's problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to start noticing, that what happens in a country like Ukraine